The colonies of humanity were young, but they carried the spirit of Earth in their soil. On the world of Asterion, children laughed in streets built under glass domes. On the mining colony of Vera, workers dug deep into mountains pulling out ores that would fuel ships and cities. On the farming colony of Helios, fields stretched for miles under a twin sun. Humanity had spread far, but even far from Earth. People still planted gardens, sang old songs, and dreamed of tomorrow. They believed they were safe. But safety in the stars was only an illusion. The Zorathi Empire had watched humanity's growth with silent fear. To them, humans were not old, powerful, or wise. They were young, fast-breeding, restless, and bold. In just 3 centuries, humans had done what other species needed thousands of years to achieve. They had stepped from world to world, building homes where once there was only dust. The Zorathi saw danger in that speed. They feared what humanity might become if left unchecked. So they decided to strike. It began without warning. One night on Helios, the sky filled with burning light. At first, colonists thought it was a meteor shower. Children pointed at the glowing streaks and clapped. But then the fire fell faster, heavier, and the ground shook with terrible impact. Farms burst into flames, fields of wheat turning to ash in seconds. On Asterion, alarms screamed inside the domes. The sky itself seemed to split open as energy bombs struck from orbit. Entire districts were gone in moments, swallowed by fire. Glass domes shattered, and the thin air outside rushed in. People ran, screaming for shelter that no longer existed. On Vera, the mines became tombs. Explosions shook the ground, collapsing tunnels where men and women had worked just hours before. Dust filled the air. Survivors clawed at the stone, coughing and crying, but the bombardment did not stop. In just 3 days, 3 human colonies had been burned. The Zorathi made no attempt to speak, no warning, no reason. Their fleets came, released destruction, and left. To them, it was only a lesson. Humanity must learn its place. But to humanity, it was something else. It was a wound. When the news reached Earth, people gathered around every screen, every broadcast. They watched images of blackened cities, broken ships, and silent fields. Mothers searched for the names of their children on lists of survivors. Fathers clenched their fists when they saw flames eating the homes they had helped to build. On the moon, a memorial was lit for the dead. The stars themselves seemed dimmer, yet in the darkness another fire began to grow. Not of bombs, but of anger. The survivors of Helios told stories of neighbors who carried children through the burning fields. On Asterion, engineers who had lost their families still fought to keep the oxygen pumps alive so at least some could breathe. On Vera, miners trapped underground sent one last signal, promising they would hold until rescue arrived. Their courage spread faster than fear. Humanity began to ask questions. Why us? Why now? And why should we bow? Among the leaders of Earth, the Interstellar Council was called to session. Delegates from every colony, every fleet, every world still standing, gathered in the great chamber in orbit above the planet. The counselors argued late into the night. Some spoke with trembling voices. We cannot fight the Zorathi. They are too strong. Their fleets are older, larger, tested in war. If we resist, we will all be destroyed. Others spoke with fire in their eyes. They killed our families. They burned our homes. If we do nothing, they will only strike again. Humanity has always faced giants, and we have always endured. But while the council argued, ordinary people did not wait. Volunteers rushed to the ruined colonies, bringing supplies and ships. Engineers built new defenses. Soldiers sharpened their training. Farmers on Helios, their fields burned to ash, began planting again in hidden valleys, refusing to let the soil go silent. Something stirred inside every human heart, something deeper than grief. It was not just survival. It was defiance. And far away, deep in the heart of Earth itself, something older than humanity began to stir as well. Earth, the cradle of mankind, felt the cries of its scattered children. The tremors of pain, the smoke of burned colonies, the sorrow of survivors, all of it reached back through blood, memory and history. The old planet listened, and in silence, it began to awaken. The Interstellar Council chamber floated high above Earth, circling the blue planet like a watchful eye. Its walls were made of crystal and steel, filled with the light of stars. Inside, leaders, commanders, and delegates gathered. Each one carried the grief of their people, and each one had their own vision for the future. At the center of the chamber, the great table glowed with holograms of the colonies that had been attacked. Red scars showed where bombs had fallen. Numbers of the dead flickered, growing as more reports arrived. The silence between the counselors was heavy, broken only by the sound of data scrolling. Finally, one delegate rose. His voice shook as he spoke. "We cannot face the Zorathian war. They have fleets beyond counting. If we fight them now, we risk the survival of every colony, even Earth itself. We must ask for peace. We must bend before they destroy us all." Murmurs filled the chamber. Some nodded, their faces pale with fear. Others frowned deeply. Another delegate, a woman from the colony of Helios, stood. Her clothes still carried the marks of smoke from her ruined home. Her voice was not weak but filled with iron. "They burned our fields. They killed our children. And now you ask us to bow? If we surrender today, there will be no tomorrow for humanity. They will see our fear and take everything. The only path left is to rise and fight." The chamber erupted into arguments. Some shouted for vengeance, others for caution. Words clashed like swords. In the corner of the chamber, Admiral Rian of the Terran fleet sat quietly. His eyes studied the holograms of burning colonies. He remembered his ancestors on Earth, who had faced empires greater than themselves yet had survived. He did not speak yet, but his silence was louder than any cry. While the council struggled, reports came from Earth itself. Strange events were unfolding across the planet. Seismic stations recorded unusual tremors. Though there were no earthquakes, storms gathered above oceans, moving with patterns that no computer could explain. Fields of grass in old farmlands began to grow faster, taller, greener, as if touched by unseen hands. At first, scientists dismissed it as coincidence. But then came the voices. Survivors from the colonies, especially children, began to speak of dreams. They said they saw Earth in their sleep, not as a planet but as a presence. Some called it a mother, some called it a guardian, but all felt the same message. Do not give up. You are not alone. A group of researchers presented this evidence before the council. They spoke carefully, knowing how strange it sounded. Earth itself is changing. Something deep within the planet is waking. We believe Gaia, the spirit of our world, is real. She is answering the destruction of her children. The chamber fell into silence. Some counselors laughed bitterly, calling it myth and madness. Others leaned forward, eyes wide with hope. The leader of Vera's delegation, an old miner with calloused hands, stood and raised his voice. My people were buried alive when the Zorathi bombs fell. Yet even in the tunnels, they dreamed of Earth calling them. If Gaia is real, then maybe humanity has a chance. Maybe our home is greater than we ever knew. But fear still lingered. One of Earth's wealthiest counselors warned, hope is not enough. We need fleets, weapons, and allies. Gaia, if she exists, cannot shield us forever. We must be wise. Reckless anger will bring only ruin. Again, the chamber filled with debate, louder and louder. Voices broke, arguments grew. The council was divided between fear and fury, between surrender and resistance. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, ordinary people had already made their choice. In the streets of Earth, crowds carried banners that read, "We will not bow." Families of survivors lit candles for the dead, but also forged weapons for the living. Young pilots volunteered for training. Farmers offered their harvest to feed soldiers. Engineers designed defenses in secret workshops. Humanity's heart was already uniting, even while its leaders argued. Admiral Ryan finally rose from his chair. His deep voice cut through the noise. We have two choices. We can kneel and hope the Zorathi spare us, or we can rise, fight, and prove to the stars that humanity will never break. Our colonies burned, but our spirit did not. If Gaia has awakened, then she is not asking us to hide. She is asking us to stand. The chamber grew silent once more. The decision was not yet made, but the seed of resolve had been planted. Far below, on the surface of Earth, the winds shifted. Clouds gathered in great spirals. Rivers swelled and forests seemed to breathe. The planet itself listened to the voices of her children. Gaia stirred, waiting for the moment to reveal her strength. And in the stars beyond, the Zorathi prepared their second strike, unaware that their fire had awakened not only human anger but something ancient, vast, and hidden within the heart of Earth itself. On the surface of Earth, strange changes spread day by day. Farmers in the green valleys of Asia woke to find crops growing faster than ever before. A single night of rain could bring fields to life as if weeks had passed in hours. In the forests of Africa, trees grew taller, their roots deeper, their leaves brighter. Fishermen on the coasts spoke of seas glowing faintly at night, the water alive with unseen energy. At first, scientists struggled to explain it. They checked the soil, the air, the water. They tested seeds and animals, but no answer came. Something beyond science was at work. In the great observatories, astronomers noticed beams of strange energy rising from Earth's core and reaching into space. These beams were faint, but they spread like threads, connecting Earth to her colonies. The energy carried patterns that no computer could decode, yet it felt almost alive. Survivors of the burned colonies began to dream more clearly. They described visions of a great figure, shaped not by flesh but by mountains, oceans, and sky. Her voice was not heard by ears but felt in the heart. She was Gaia, the soul of Earth, awakened at last. In their dreams, she spoke only simple words, "My children, do not kneel, rise, you are not alone." On Asterion, the survivors who had lost their domes gathered in shelters. They dreamed of Gaia, and when they woke, they found strength they thought was gone. They repaired machines with greater speed as if guided by unseen hands. Oxygen systems that should have failed suddenly worked again. On Helios, farmers returned to the burned fields. They placed their hands on the black soil and felt warmth, though no sun had touched it. When they planted new seeds, green sprouts rose almost at once. "Gaia blesses us," they whispered. "She is with us." On Vera, the trapped miners heard whispers through the stone. They followed them and found paths to hidden exits. No one could explain how the tunnels opened, but the miners said it was Earth guiding them home. The Interstellar Council could no longer ignore the truth. Reports poured in from every colony, every fleet. Something was awakening. Something tied not just to Earth but to every human soul. The scientists who once doubted now stood before the council and admitted, "We do not understand fully, but Gaia is real. She reacts to our pain, to our hope, to our unity. She is not only the spirit of Earth, but the strength of humanity itself." Some counselors still feared. They asked, what if this awakening is dangerous? What if Gaia cannot be controlled? But others answered with confidence, "She does not ask for control. She asks for faith. She is our protector, not our chain." While leaders debated, humanity changed in quiet ways. Soldiers training in space stations found their endurance higher. Pilots said their reflexes sharpened. Engineers discovered new designs flowing into their minds as if inspired by dreams. These designs were not like old machines. They were alive, made with crystal, energy, and living metal shaped by Gaia's power. Admiral Rian was among the first to test these changes. When he placed his hand on the console of a new ship, he felt a pulse, almost like a heartbeat. The ship seemed to know him, to trust him, as if Gaia had breathed life into steel. He smiled for the first time in many days and whispered, "We are not broken. We are beginning." Still shadows remained. The Zorathi Empire was preparing its second strike. Scouts reported fleets gathering on the edges of human space. Their plan was simple: crush the survivors before they could rise again. The Zorathi did not know that every attack only fed Gaia's awakening, but soon they would learn. Across Earth, people gathered in great circles, praying, singing, or simply standing in silence. They felt the planet's heartbeat beneath their feet. The old myths of Earth, stories of a mother spirit who guarded her children, no longer felt like stories. They were truth. Children born after the attack seemed different. They laughed in the ruins, their eyes bright, their steps strong. Parents said Gaia had touched them, gifting the next generation with resilience greater than the last. On the night before the Zorathi fleets moved again, a storm unlike any in history covered Earth. Lightning danced in patterns across the sky, forming shapes that resembled wings, shields, and swords. The seas roared, the winds howled, but no city was harmed. Instead, people looked up and felt courage. Gaia's fury was no longer hidden. She was awake, and when humanity looked to the stars, they no longer saw enemies too strong to defeat. They saw a future waiting to be defended, with Earth herself standing beside them. The awakening was complete. Humanity was ready for war. The Zorathi fleets approached human space with confidence. Millions of ships moved in perfect formation, like a storm of steel across the void. Their commanders believed victory was certain. Humanity had already been weakened by the first attacks, and now the Empire intended to finish the job. But the Zorathi did not know the full truth. They did not know that Earth itself had awakened. They did not know that every human heartbeat carried the strength of their planet. The first sign came at the edge of the Helios system. Sensors detected strange energy surges, light bending in impossible ways, storms forming in the vacuum of space. Zorathi captains called it an anomaly, a trick of their instruments. But soon their ships began to tremble. Gravity fields shifted without warning and engines sputtered as if unseen hands were holding them back. On the human side, the fleets were ready. Ships designed with new energy patterns inspired by Gaia hummed with life. Weapons that once needed complex calculations now responded instinctively to pilots' commands. The young pilots of humanity, some only just trained, felt their reflexes guided by a force beyond them. Admiral Ryan stood on the bridge of the flagship TerraNova, watching the Zorathi approach. His hands rested lightly on the controls. Feeling the pulse of the ship beneath him, he spoke quietly to his crew. Remember this. We fight not only for ourselves but for every world they tried to burn. Gaia stands with us. Trust her and trust each other. The Zorathi opened fire first. Beams of destruction cut through space, striking human ships and sending debris floating in the void. But the human fleet moved differently than expected. Shields pulsed with energy that seemed alive. Entire squadrons dodged with precision that no human could achieve alone. The Zorathi were stunned. Then the planet responded. From Earth, beams of energy surged into orbit, forming barriers and arcs of light that met the enemy with crushing force. Comets of plasma shot from the planet itself, targeting enemy ships and disabling them before weapons could even reach human vessels. Everywhere the Zorathi turned, obstacles awaited them. Fields of energy twisted around their ships, forcing them off course. Asteroids lifted from nearby belts and moved as if guided by invisible hands, blocking attacks and crushing vessels. On the colonies, people watched the battle unfold through live broadcasts. Survivors of Asterion, Helios, and Vera cheered as they saw humanity fight back. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair ships. Farmers prepared supplies and children waved from safe shelters, feeling the pulse of Earth through their very veins. The Zorathi realized their mistake too late. They had attacked not just humans but the planet that bore them, and that planet would not allow its children to be destroyed. Amidst the chaos, human pilots executed daring maneuvers no training could have prepared them for. They flew through enemy lines, disabling engines, cutting communications, and forcing retreats. The energy, Fro. Gaia seemed to guide them, giving them strength, speed, and courage. Admiral Ryan saw an opportunity. He ordered a concentrated strike on the Zorathi flagship. The ship moved as if alive, almost anticipating the enemy's moves. Beams of concentrated energy struck the heart of the enemy vessel. Explosions rippled through its hull and communications fell silent. Panic spread among the Zorathi. Their disciplined formations began to crumble. Ships collided, engines failed, and the invaders realized that humanity was not the same species they had attacked before. Humans were united, fearless, and protected by a force beyond comprehension. On Helios, farmers and engineers watched in awe as their planet's energy reached further into space. They understood at last that Gaia was not just a myth or dream. She was a living shield, a weapon, and a guide. Humanity was not alone in this fight. As the battle raged, the Zorathi attempted to retreat, but Gaia would not allow it. Energy barriers cut off escape routes. Human ships pressed forward with unstoppable courage. The invaders had no choice but to withdraw, leaving behind the wreckage of their pride. When the final Zorathi ship jumped out of human space, silence fell. Stars glimmered in peace once more. The human fleet regrouped, battered but victorious. The colonies had survived, their people had fought, and the awakening of Earth had changed the course of the war. Admiral Ryan looked at the stars and spoke softly. "They will return," he said, "but we will be ready. Gaia has shown us her power, and humanity will never bow again." From the surface of Earth, winds carried whispers across forests and oceans. Rivers glowed with faint energy. Mountains hummed with life. Gaia had awakened, and she would continue to protect her children wherever they went in the stars. And humanity, united and strengthened, was ready to rise. The Zorathi retreat was only temporary. Across human space, scouts reported that the alien empire was gathering more fleets, determined to crush humanity once and for all. But humans no longer feared. They had seen the power of Gaia, and they had learned that they were stronger together than any enemy could imagine. On Earth, Every city, forest, and ocean thrummed with energy. Scientists, engineers, and ordinary citizens worked together to channel Gaia's awakening into new defenses and ships. Entire fleets were rebuilt in record time, powered not only by engines but by the living energy of their planet. Admiral Ryan stood on the bridge of the flagship TerraNova, watching the stars. Beside him, pilots tuned their ships to the pulse of Gaia. Each pilot felt the planet's heartbeat in their veins, guiding their hands, their eyes, and their courage. "We are not alone," he said quietly. "The stars themselves are with us." When the Zorathi returned, they found something they had never expected. Humanity was ready. The fleets moved with perfect coordination, faster and smarter than any tactical system could predict. Ships shaped by Gaia's energy seemed alive, responding to human thoughts and instinct. Human pilots dodged with impossible precision, striking back with weapons that burned with light drawn from the planet itself. From the surface of Earth, the planet reached into space with waves of energy. Lightning arcs, rivers of plasma, and shields of pure force surrounded the human fleet. Gaia's power was everywhere, unseen but undeniable. The Zorathi had underestimated the bond between humans and their world. The battle began in earnest. Zorathi ships opened fire, but their beams dissolved in the energy fields generated by Gaia. Entire fleets of invaders were pushed back by invisible forces. Meteors lifted from nearby belts moved like giant fists, crushing enemy vessels. Human ships surged forward, guided by the courage of their people and the power of their homeworld. Colonists who had survived the first attacks joined from every world. Engineers repaired ships in orbit, farmers supplied food for crews, and children, inspired by dreams of Gaia, sent messages of hope that reached even the farthest corners of space. Humanity fought not just for survival, but for justice, for pride, and for the bond between themselves and the planet that had borne them. Amidst the chaos, Admiral Ryan led the final strike. The Terran dawn pierced the heart of the Zorathi command fleet. Energy drawn from Earth pulsed through the ship, focusing into a beam that shattered the enemy flagship. Communications fell silent and panic spread through the invader ranks. The Zorathi realized too late that they had awoken a force far greater than themselves. The planet, humanity, and the spirit of survival combined in a power that no empire could contain. Ships retreated, fleeing the wrath of a species they had thought weak. On Earth, the people celebrated quietly. There was no need for fireworks. Gaia herself lit the skies with auroras and the oceans glowed with gentle light. Survivors of the colonies hugged each other, tears of relief and pride streaming down their faces. Humanity had endured. Humanity had risen. Admiral Ryan addressed the people of Earth through every screen, every communication channel, and every ship. "Today, we have learned a truth the universe cannot deny. Humanity is strong, united, and guided by our home. We will never bow to fear, and we will never forget those we have lost. From this day forward, we rise not only as humans, but as protectors of life and guardians of our worlds." The colonies, once broken and burned, began to rebuild stronger than ever. New cities rose, powered by energy from Gaia and the ingenuity of human engineers. Children laughed again in streets and fields. Farmers planted crops with care, and miners returned to their tunnels knowing that the planet watched over them. Across human space, ships carried the message of unity and strength. Other species who had once doubted humans now looked with respect and caution. Humanity had survived the impossible, fought with courage, and harnessed the power of their world itself. On the surface of Earth, forests swayed, oceans shimmered, and mountains glowed faintly with the energy of Gaia. The planet hummed a quiet song of triumph. Humanity had awakened something greater than themselves, and in return, Gaia had protected them, guided them, and strengthened them. The stars were no longer empty or frightening. They were full of possibilities. Humanity would explore, defend, and grow, carrying the memory of burned colonies and the lessons of courage. The hidden fury of Gaia was no longer hidden. She had risen, and so had her children, and together they stepped forward into the universe stronger, wiser, and united, ready to meet whatever challenges lay ahead.